I am here with
as am I.
So Ben Burgess. This is my Philosophy Friday co-host Jennifer Burgess, and I think today, of course, always open to questions. Want to send a super chat or anything, but I think we are going to start out with a little Aristotle and virtue ethics, and a little Aristotle. You can have a little Aristotle as a treat. So, I don't know. Usually, when I'm talking about one of these people in class, I always do on the whiteboard, chalkboard, put like with the arrows in between their names, the Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, like in the Chidi's whiteboard in The Good Place. When Eleanor asks him who died and put Aristotle in charge of ethics, and he says, Plato, weren't you paying attention? So the cheesy line I was using in class is that, Plato's started, the academy, one of the first university-like entities in the Western world, which his most famous student was Aristotle. Aristotle would ultimately start his own school, the Lyceum, and be the tutor of Alexander the Great, who would go on to.
I thought this was a philosophy
to conquer
podcast, not a history podcast.
Conquer most of the known world, and that this is a level of influence on the world that I expected at least one of them to have, so that someday somebody could put me in one of those, X taught Y taught Z chains. But Jen is not amused, or she's so. So
it's too bad I don't have my dinosaur here. He's at Ben's house. I have a stuffed green dinosaur. His name's Aristotle.
My parents' house, yeah, right.
Yeah. Ben's parents' house, right? We do live together.
So, yeah. Jen has a stuffed dinosaur named Aristotle.
Ben gave him to me.
I did. So
last Valentine's Day.
That is correct. That
along with the traditional Valentine's Day giraffe.
Yeah, that just goes.
So I got a giraffe and a dinosaur.
Obviously, there's going to be the traditional Valentine's Day giraffe. That's just customary. Yeah.
Any good husband gives the traditional Valentine's Day giraffe.
Obviously,
it's like just the basic,
Right. Like that. So I don't know. Are we comparing these as names for dinosaurs, or I guess I don't know. But as to Aristotle himself, where do you want to start? You want to do eudaimonia?
If not, why not?
If not, why not? I'm sure that would sound much better in Greek too.
If not, why not?
Yeah.
That's my dad saying, if not, why not? I'd get that Texas accent in there. Hi, Thomas.
Think he's watching this?
Not a chance.
Fair enough.
So what were we doing?
Eudaimonia?
Yeah.
You want
to go ahead.
Say some stuff about that? Okay. Or
I'll let you start.
I can say some stuff about that. Okay, sure. We can do that.
What is that? Beauty before age or something? I don't know. Does that mean you're beautiful and I'm old, or that I'm beautiful and you're old?
I think if I'm going first, that'd be age before
beauty. Age before beauty. All right, go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't know, but we're not going to find out.
Yeah, I don't know. You were against
Pablo.
Yeah, I'm not. I was just wondering about that. It was Pablo who. Yeah, the other fun teacher chain, our philosophical influenced and family chain, is the one I think we mentioned, the utilitarianism stream.
I knew you were going to say that.
Jeremy Bentham was John Stuart Mill's godfather, and John Stuart Mill was Bertrand Russell's godfather. So one of the more historically important chains of godless godfathers there. But in any case, oh man, sad. So I take it you found a browser you can now watch it.
This is appalling.
But in any case,
this is censorship. Should look into this.
Yeah. By Firefox. It seems like they probably haven't updated in a long time, would be my guess. But in any case, So I guess one way to get into it, the eudaimonia and virtue ethics stuff, is to think about those of you who watched the previous stream on utilitarianism, or the Beginner's Guide to Kant, part 1 and 2 bonus episodes that we did with.
Not we.
Yes, that I did with Ryan Lake and
You have a lot of we's.
Russ Bruglia and Matt McManus.
Ryan, are you here?
At some point in the future, we'll do a part 3, but it might be a little bit. It's other stuff is scheduled, but there's a lot to say about Kant, and you.
He'll plug all his stuff at the end. Don't worry.
And you can't do it in just 2. So, yeah, I know. So if you. Yeah, GTAA is the we. Thank you in that sentence. So that's so yeah. If you watched the utilitarianism live stream or the follow up on the trolley problem, or you watched or listened to those Beginner's Guide to Kant episodes, and you think about like that kind of debate about ethics between utilitarians and Kantians, the way that's framed is they're arguing about like what kinds of actions are morally right. Like there's an anthology that I've used a bunch of times in teaching ethics classes. That's I think it's edited by Rachel's, whichever the younger one of the Rachel's is. That's Stewart. Yeah, Stewart Rachel's. It's called, which is called The Right Thing to Do. Because that seems like a natural thing to call an anthology about ethics, because when you're thinking about
hi Charles,
modern, I'm sure she likes the y'all. Yeah, since we started teaching in Georgia,
do you have to bring this
a couple
up?
of years ago, her text and speech patterns started coming out a lot more. I started hearing a lot more y'alling.
Yes, because I took the y'all out, intentionally. I took the y'all out when we got to New Jersey. And then when we got back to Georgia, I was like, oh, I can bring it back in.
So those, when we're thinking about like modern moral philosophy, generally speaking, the way that things are framed is in terms of arguments about what the right thing to do is. And a lot of ancient moral philosophy, like Aristotle, starts out by asking a completely different question, which y'all might be now wondering nope, doesn't sound natural when I do it.
It doesn't at all.
Is from Michigan, so far north from where I grew up, you actually have to drive south to get to Canada. So nearest border crossing. But in any case,
yeah, you cannot say.
I can't say y'all. I'm not allowed to appropriate the y'all.
No.
But the question that a lot of ancient moral philosophy starts with isn't what's the right thing to do. It's what's a good life. Which is where the eudaimonia stuff comes in. So you want me to continue on this, or do you want to come in with the? Because I mean, this is I remember a long time ago we said, you said if you were going to get a tattoo, it would be the word eudaimonia in Greek. So so I want to.
Not that I've gotten any tattoos, parents. I have not gotten any of anything.
Yeah. I do that all the time. It's completely incurable. But yeah. So eudaimonia, what's that?
Well, to go back to what Ben said, it's he was talking about living the good life
of Michigan,
Michigan.
The lower peninsula of Michigan.
What were you saying about living the good life? And part of living the good life is being a good person. So instead of talking about what is the right thing to do, the idea was how is the right way to be? What's the
right way to live?
What is the right way to live? And that then doing the right thing just kind of just kind of, who is that dude you were showing me? Doing the right thing just kind of follows out of that. Who is the guy you were showing me with all the...
that would be Slavoj Žižek.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Who's from...
Sorry, I'm just so uncomfortable.
Who's from the same, very much the same part of the world as the non-redneck side of my mom's family comes from in the Yugoslavia. So Slovenian, not Croatian, but same area.
It's all the same. What were we talking? Oh yeah, Aristotle. Yeah, so he was concerned about, I mean, they were concerned about the way to live a good life. Eudaimonia, sometimes translated happiness. I like the translation of flourishing. Ben actually used that in relation to me when we were living in New Jersey, because I think that was actually, which is, sad now because it's over, but that was the happiest time of my life, the couple years. How long were we in New Jersey? 3 years?
3.5 years.
3.5 years? Yeah, the 3.5 years that we were in New Jersey was really the best time of my life. I had a job that I loved, really good friends. I was just very happy all the way around. And he said something about how I was flourishing there. And I was like, Ben, nobody talks like that. Except Aristotle sometimes. Aristotle and Ben.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I parried you so often. See, yeah, like I know it, not an exact translation, but to try to give students a sense of what people like Plato and Aristotle, mean. They talk about eudaimonia, like sometimes I'll say the happy flourishing of a well-lived life. That seems to kind of get at what they mean by this, because if you just hear happiness, you might just think pleasure, like in an immediate sense. And that's, I think, related maybe, but a little bit different from what they're talking about.
Yeah. And happiness, what makes me happy and what makes Ben happy may not be the same thing. But for Aristotle, there was this more objective, what is a good life? And he had all these things that fit into a good life. And it was...
Yes.
It's a more objective way of living than we usually think of right now. Now it's just like, well, if that makes you happy, whatever. If that makes you happy, whatever. And he was more of a, no, these are ingredients that you need for happiness. Yeah.
I guess off topic, but just real quick to answer Darius's question. So sort of, yes, Aristotle talks about how to understand, everything that exists now, you have to say there's a prime mover, which is not necessarily exactly the same thing as a creator who's creating from nothing. But we're not going to get into that right now. We're going to stick with eudaimonia and then get in from there to the virtue stuff. I don't know. Aristotle maybe carries a share of the William Lane Craig thing, but although I think more immediately that's medieval philosophers who were influenced by Aristotle. But one thing. If you Plato in the Republic talks about. This view of the soul, where there's the rational part of you and these primitive passions, and it has and all of them are necessary, but Plato thinks that that it's important that the reason rule over the passions. And this is tied in with this idea of living a good life, is one that's going to be ruled by reason, which is, by the way, why which is same as in the ideal city that he's imagining in the Republic. It's going to be ruled by philosophers, which is funny. That's who Plato thought should be in charge. It's a interesting coincidence, that he was a philosopher and he wanted philosophers to be in charge of everything. Is he
wrong, though?
Yes. But official GTA position pro democracy. But
Look, just because he was a philosopher doesn't mean he was wrong.
Sure. You might question his motivations, but
you might, but it still doesn't mean he was wrong.
But, and then, and actually, one thing I always thought was really interesting is there's a book called Tragedy and Philosophy by Walter Kaufman. I always really liked, where in the beginning he talks about this, how Plato said that. Because you don't want people stirring up, dangerous and uncontrollable passions, and this ideal philosopher king ruled city, you'd have the only poets that you'd allow. You wouldn't allow the ones who wrote tragedies. You'd only allow ones who wrote hymns to the gods and panegyrics to the good. But Aristotle, by the time we get to Aristotle, he not only is fine with writing tragedies, but he writes the Poetics, where he gives poets advice about how to write good tragedies. And that's not because he thinks, it's not because he disagrees that it's important that the reason rule over the passions, in having this good life, but it's because he thinks that tragedies actually serve a useful function, because they allow you to sort of have controlled expulsions of these dangerous passions under carefully controlled circumstances.
Experience catharsis.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Which is also a fun thing to do in like a classroom discussion, like ask people why they think that people like watching horror movies, and sort of go through different possible answers.
Which is something I will never understand.
Yes. Which is that's my favorite genre of movies. Jen always finds that very confusing.
No, I'm more into the Pixar type stuff.
But which is actually not one we've done much for the live the Wins movie live streams, but
Pixar.
Either one of those actually. Although on the horror movie front, Kitty is in. The door was open. He just meows a lot.
He does.
He's a very
doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah, he's a very chatty kitty. But he has. But yeah, we are doing The Shining Wednesday after next, so that's at least a horror movie. But
you gonna wear your T-shirt?
Oh yeah, I've got my Overlook Hotel shirt.
And where did you get that?
You gave it to me.
I did, for Christmas.
So so yeah.
Maybe if you do some Pixar movies, I would actually do the Shining. I told Ben I would be happy to join in on The Shining, but he's got like 25 people already. So.
There's no reason we couldn't have 26th.
It'll have to be somebody else.
Okay. Actually, it is. If it was you, there could be a 26. Otherwise, we're full up. So, but
always room for the wife.
Yeah. But so in thinking about what counts as a good life, and thinking about how to live that, Aristotle becomes really interested in. I'm guessing you've actually seen that. I
have. I would be happy to see it again.
It was an interesting thought. And thank you for the super chat, Yoda. Oh my God, I would love to see Zizek come comment on Kung Fu Panda.
I would just like to do Kung Fu Panda Asia.
As the panda says, there is no secret sauce. So special ingredient, whatever. Yeah, maybe we'll work on that. He's been on the show, so it's possible. But in any case, so this leads Aristotle to think about what character.
Hang on. Who's Leonard and Penny?
I do not know. That is a reference to something I'm not familiar with. Yeah.
He's always making references, and I'm like, huh? But at least now he can be with me.
Fair enough. Yeah. No, he's very into the movie, so yeah, maybe we can make that happen at some point. But
I've never seen that.
Yeah, an ex-girlfriend
Didn't
maybe.
you see 1 or 2 episodes?
Yeah, an ex-girlfriend made me watch the first couple episodes many years ago.
That's why she's an ex.
Yeah, I did not care for it.
No, I've never seen it.
But in any case, so Aristotle's thinking about which kinds of character traits are conducive to living the good life, to achieving this happy flourishing, and this leads him to a version of to like the first version, I guess, or certainly, the one that was most historically influential of virtue ethics, which doesn't, the way, so utilitarians or Kantians say the right thing. I actually did show her that video of Jean's son watching Zizek and being delighted by him. So very, very little son. Yeah, so they're like, one way to think about this. So a virtue is a positive character trait, and same way of vice, which obviously we use that word vice now, like there are all sorts of associations,
much more dramatic
associations,
and virtue, we think of women having to keep their ankles covered and such.
Right. And vice, sort of the opposite of that, like the Vice Squad.
Show your ankles.
Yeah, exactly. Miami Vice, etc. But all vice means is negative character trait. All virtue means is positive character trait. And so virtue ethics is. That
only has your name.
Oh, because I forgot to change it when we started. I usually change it back when we do this. Here.
Unbelievable. Thank you.
So, what are we talking about?
I don't know. Okay. Virtue and vice.
Yeah. All right. Virtue and
vice.
Showing
your ankles.
Yes, right. Scandalous. So the way, so the sort of locus of concern with virtue ethics isn't on whether, like, you could think of like utilitarianism and other consequentialist theories as being focused. This is something I got from Michael Sloat, classic history of ethics class I taught from him many years ago, and he'd do this diagram on the board where it says the consequentialist is judging moral rightness and wrongness by the good or bad outcomes that happen downstream of the action, and the deontologist, like Kant, is just judging the action in itself, and okay, does this action line up with a moral rule, yes or no? Whereas the virtue ethicist is focused on the character traits upstream of the action that led the person to act that way in the first place, which I think, whatever else you end up thinking about virtue ethics, like, I think there is something that it does really like key into about most people's moral psychology, I think, because
most people think of themselves as good people.
Yeah, and that's the issue they're really more focused on, right? Like, and certainly, like, intuitively, pre-philosophically, right? If I'm like I think if you think about like the psychology of guilt, right? Like, unless you're really different from me, like when I feel guilty about things, I almost never think, oh no, I led to more bad than good consequences in the world, and certainly not, or oh no, I violated a moral rule. I think, why did I have to be such a selfish asshole about that? I shouldn't have done that. What I'm focused on is, like, when I feel guilty, it's generally because I feel as if I acted on the basis of negative character traits. And I think most people are like that. You want to chime in here?
My turn. Yeah, when one of us drinks, the other one chimes in.
So virtues.
Yeah. So what is a virtue? A virtue is a mean between two vices. So you've got your, let's say, courage. So courage is a virtue. So that's kind of in the middle between foolhardiness and cowardice. You don't race off into war without even knowing if you have your weapons or not, and you don't hide behind a tree. You exhibit appropriate courage, and that's exactly the mean amount of ankle. So when you're showing the proper amount, and it's not so much that you're showing too much courage or too little courage. Courage just is the virtue. And once you're over here and over here, then you're not showing courage anymore. No. No, we run it through every formulation before we do anything.
All right, so you did the formula of universal law. Better do the formula of humanity and the formula of the kingdom of ends just to make sure you didn't get something wrong. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, there's visual here. If we were just audio, that would be different, but there's visual here.
Yeah. So Aristotle thinks that virtues always lie in the mean between two extremes. Yeah, the courage one is a nice obvious case. The foolhardiness or cowardice. So if maybe think of like if you're off dancing in nightclubs in the middle of COVID, that's foolhardy. If you can't if you can't even like go to the door to get a pizza while wearing your mask, because that would be too much, that's cowardice. And then you're going to get a lot like this, like generosity maybe lies in the mean between stinginess and what would the
profligacy.
Ooh, that's a good word. Profligacy. I like that.
I am a doctor. I do know some. Know some big words.
Yeah. Jen has a PhD in the big words. So yeah, stinginess and profligacy. That's good. What are some other virtues that intuitively lie in the mean between extremes?
What were we talking about? Temperance.
Okay. Yeah.
Is between
so
insensibility and what's a good word? Here, you show that you know some big words. and like degeneracy. I don't know. Yeah.
Insensibility and degeneracy. So you don't want to you don't want to be an annoying teetotaler, and you also don't want to be passed out in the middle of the street all the time.
Exactly. So. Then you can enjoy some good food, enjoy some good wine, or whatever it is you enjoy, but don't be a glutton, and don't just eat crackers and drink water. It's okay. Ben's basically like that, to be honest.
But I do go to the door to get the pizza.
You do.
So
you do. You open the door and then you're like, put it on the ground. Put it on the ground.
I am not. I take the pizza in my hand. I had, sign the credit card receipt like a normal person. But Waleed is among the best humans on the planet because he is a give them an argument patron. So we like him and we like everything that he has to say. Self-love being between abnegation and selfishness. It's a good one. Like I remember to call back to the stream we did about the trolley problem. There's one of the later papers that Judith Jarvis Thompson wrote about that. She has an example that's supposed to show that at that point she thought that it was wrong to even pull the lever. And she says, well, imagine that you have like a trolley type situation where you're driving a car and the brakes are shot, whatever. And you can only avoid running into the 5 people by either turning right and running into one person or turning left and running into a wall and thus sacrificing your own life. And she says that it's only right to, if it would be right to turn right, then really what you should do is turn left, and not like kill yourself, and not like, bring some other person into it. But then she says, we wouldn't really want like it doesn't really seem like you have a moral obligation to kill yourself. And she says we wouldn't even necessarily admire, like that's not what we'd want for like our children, that they would grow up to value their life so little they would do that. So whatever your intuitions are about that case, like I think that would be like an illustration of the idea that like abnegation is bad the same way excessive selfishness is bad, that you should have like an appropriate amount of regard for yourself, which actually gives me flashbacks to that debate I did with the Yarnbrook from the Ayn Rand Institute, about whether you can whether selfishness is a virtue, and my hot take is no, it is not. So you shouldn't be selfish. You also shouldn't do excessive abnegation, right? But you shouldn't be selfish. So
another one would be having proper pride, rather than devaluing yourself.
Yeah, that you
or vanity.
You should have you should have an appropriate level of pride in your legitimate accomplishments. You like, and we can. It's pretty easy to see how too much or too little would be bad there. Now you can. One way that you might push, you might question whether Aristotle is right to think that this is always going to hold, that like every time something is morally good in this way, that it lies in this sort of three Goldilocks zone between the two extremes. I remember in that Michael Sloat class a claim that that he made there as like part of his speculation about why in the early modern world that this sort of approach to ethics went by the wayside. So that's an interesting point, right?
Well, sure, but what are you giving up? I'm not going to drive myself into a wall, whereas I might give up something else of like I really want to buy myself this whatever, but I'm going to give to this charity instead.
Yeah, and I think you could even I think Aristotle might even say, look, maybe there's some super extreme circumstances in which extreme self-sacrifice would be warranted, but the attitude, right, the sort of character trait that leads you to being willing to do it under those super extreme circumstances, but not under normal circumstances, might still show like the sort of right level of self-regard.
Throwing yourself on a grenade in wartime, that's one thing, but then the whole just driving your car into the wall.
But you shouldn't just
lest you hit someone. That's a little.
Yeah, you shouldn't be willing. It doesn't. Like the sort of Aristotelian intuition here is it doesn't even seem like admirable necessarily to just be willing to throw away your life over nothing. That's not the sort of person you'd model yourself on, or what you aspire to.
And even the way that society sees it, we see someone who threw themselves on a grenade as a hero, but we would see person who drove themselves into a wall as a weirdo.
Yeah. Ooh, Infinite Jest reference. I like it.
Don Gately.
Yes, abiding. Yeah. Not going to tell the story that reminds me of Unstream. And in one sentence, no, watch the debate with Yarnbrook.
And in another sentence, yes, I am a girl, and yes, I enjoy David Foster Wallace. And if you think I shouldn't, you can suck it. So there.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's a ridiculously good book. I don't, if somebody,
and some of his other stuff too.
Some of the essays.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like novels, you
should definitely read
Infinite Jest. Yeah, for sure. Like, believe it or not, by the time I got to the end of that thing, again, I could have happily done a few hundred more pages, so, I think, So I remember Sloat's speculation about one of the reasons why he thought with the rise of sort of modern commercial society that this kind of ancient virtue ethics approach to morality became less popular was he said that when it comes to things like honoring a contract, business contract, that it's not really susceptible to this sort of virtuous
texting Ryan
action is a mean between the extremes approach, because it says it's like binary. You either honor it or you don't. Although I've never been totally sure if I buy his point on that, because it seems to me that we could imagine, even with contracts, like honoring contracts, we could imagine behavior we found excessive in two directions. So this example probably doesn't work as well anymore because it probably just shows my age, and
so much shows your age.
So probably the majority of people watching this, who I'm pretty sure were all born in 2017,
more or less,
and, don't have this memory, but like they used to be that like Microsoft or whoever would send you in the mail like this like sample, like it was like a disc, it was like looked like a CD, with software on it. And it would say in the I know you don't know
what are you talking about.
I know you don't know what I'm talking about. And it would say like in the fine print, right? That like by opening this up, you're agreeing to these terms of service, for this product. And so I always thought, Oliver was born in 2014, so he's older than the average, average age of give an argument for this. But it's. In any case, but you can imagine this for like that. So look, somebody who is so intense about contracts that really, actually, come to think of it, I didn't need to use the example that showed my age. I could have just said like the like iTunes, where like you have to like to use stuff, you have to click through something that says I agree, and there's like the thing that you're clicking the I agree to is like 20 pages of fine print, and nobody reads that thing. You'd be a deeply strange person if you read that. Remember,
wasn't there an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Oh yeah. That was a joke in there. That, like, was it probably Captain Holt was like, oh, you don't read the fine print? I always read the fine print.
No, it was something like Jake had not read the fine print, but he got saved because Amy did.
Right, that sounds right. So yeah, you could like thinking like, oh, this is a very serious contract. I'm only going to click I agree if I've read all 20 pages of the legalese fine print in the iTunes, user agreement. So I know, so I know I can make sure I abide by every clause of this contract. That would be taking contracts too seriously. Just blatantly disregarding stuff you agreed with might be taking it not seriously enough. So I think Aristotle could actually withstand the contract thing. But
so with the ritual sacrifice to, well, yeah, there's that. There's always got to be that guy.
That one guy, yeah.
Don't be that guy.
Yeah. Also, I believe C. Money Burns. I believe that's a patron. So again, among the best human beings ever. But yes.
So when Aristotle talks about the mean, he says that it's not going to be the same for everybody. So the mean is going to differ with where you are, who you're dealing with. So if you're in a culture where this sort of thing is a thing, then what's going to be counted as a virtue is going to be different than a culture like.
So you could, so that's interesting. So you could have a version of virtue theory where you had incorporated a degree of cultural relativism on some issues. You said like that, like there might be what counts as a culture, might be a virtue, might be locally different to some extent.
Well, he does talk about that, how the mean is different in different situations.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
Fair enough. I don't know. I mean, I if so, I don't know if that makes the virtue theory more attractive to me, because I think I think I'd tend towards a little bit more of a like, I think my inclination in that case would be that if you have a culture that tells you that you should commit ritual self-sacrifice under those circumstances, maybe your culture needs to be better. But
I would not disagree with that. I think there's room for both.
Yeah.
Like Shannon Sharp always says, two things can be true.
Fair enough. Shannon is very wise. So, yeah. So Aristotle is very. So he doesn't actually talk extensively, I think, about slavery, although he does have, some problematic takes on that subject, no doubt about it. I think he says somewhere that, like, well, it's actually sort of an ambiguous passage, because he says, like, slavery is okay if you're a natural slave, but not everybody is born as a natural slave. So if you're not and you're enslaved, that's very bad. I don't know how you're supposed to tell, who's who, on his view. But I also think some of his description of what counts as a good life and who he thinks is capable of leading it, might be only for a certain portion of the human race, right? Like, I think he also has some bad takes on gender. I know that's pretty shocking for somebody who was an aristocrat who lived in ancient Greece, but
he did allow women to study at his school, though.
Okay, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
I read no footnotes. It's not important enough to make it into the text.
Okay, but you did.
Sorry,
you did read all couple hundred pages of endnotes at the end of Infinite Jest.
Endnotes are different, I feel.
Okay,
I'm much more likely to read endnote, and of course, with Infinite Jest, I would have read them wherever they had been placed. But much more likely to read endnotes and footnotes.
Yeah,
footnotes are just annoying.
Yeah. Yeah, you were at least doing it on the Kindle. When I was reading Infinite Jest, it was that, like, a physical copy that Robin gave me way back in 2007. So I had 2 bookmarks, I think, set up the whole time, one in the main book and one in the endnotes.
Yep.
But yeah, I think, and there's an interesting, yeah, so I think that this business of, like, who's capable of being a rational person and living, a good life, especially as far as that good life involves, like, civic participation in something like the Athenian Republic, is an interesting issue with Aristotle and other, like, ancient Greek philosophers, and versus modern figures who they might have influenced, to one degree or another. Because, yeah, these are all obviously very good questions, right? What about women? What about slaves? Etc. But I think that this is. But I think, like, even like Marx, there's some influence from Aristotle, because I think he has this idea that a good society is one where people are sort of let loose to flourish in the way that, like, their species being, as a phrase he used sometimes, dictates. So he thinks being able to be creative and and have a society where people are able to unleash those abilities within themselves. I think, to the extent that he has a view about human nature, that Marx and Engels have a view about human nature, I think is actually very Aristotle influenced. But other ways that you could credit, like, so I think it's also interesting maybe to think about other kind of variants of virtue ethics, or places where you could, like, accept the basic framework, but you could push back against Aristotle on some issues, right? So, like, for example, Aristotle has a knowledge condition for virtue.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that? How does that work?
You have to know what you're doing.
All right.
I mean, basically, that's it. In order to have a virtue, you can't just do the honest thing one time. You can't be honest in some situations and not in others. You can't be honest by accident. These things have to be done a certain way, and you have to know what you're doing. You have to know that, okay, this is the honest thing. I want to do the honest thing. This is why I'm going to... Ryan, you suck.
Which is we're actually just saying that we should have Ryan on as a guest for one of these.
Yeah. Well. No, I was just texting Ryan. I was like, "Where are you?" And he responds with his physical location. I'm like, that's not what I was asking. Yeah. So Aristotle, it's not just a matter of doing the thing; it's the way in which you do it, and you have to be aware of this. You have to to know what you're doing. So that's the knowledge condition, and it's been questioned whether this is really something that's necessary in order to have a virtue, because let's say modesty. No, he did not.
Sorry, modesty.
Modesty. So with modesty, how can you intentionally be modest? Because it seems like in order to have modesty, there has to be some degree of undervaluing yourself. Not a lot, but some degree of you don't really understand, just how nice you are or just how smart you are. So there has to be some sort of not really seeing things exactly the way they are for there to be modesty. So does this mean modesty can't be a virtue? This is, that sounds funny because that's something that we always do think of as a virtue.
Yeah, there's Rosalind Hursthouse has this nice literary example about Huck Finn, where Huck is helping Jim escape from slavery, and he's doing it in a way that, like, from a virtue ethics sort of framework, and you can look at this and say, look, he's clearly acting virtuously because he's acting on the basis of compassion and friendship and all this good stuff. But in Twain's depiction in the novel, Huck doesn't know that he is acting virtuously. In fact, he thinks the opposite.
He thinks he's doing something wrong, but Jim is his friend, so.
Yeah, but he feels bad about it because he thinks he's doing wrong because he's been enculturated into this slave society, and he thinks that it's wrong to take away somebody's property, by helping them, escape to freedom. But
we would all do things that we think maybe are wrong in order to help a friend. So that's kind of what he has going on here. He's doing it even though he thinks it's wrong. So he's clearly not meeting the knowledge condition.
Yeah, I was trying to remember some of this earlier, this afternoon, and I was looking at this paper about this that Tug refers to. So there's this nice Greek word, akrasia, which is doing.
Now that I would not have tattooed on me.
Yes. Or at least you'd want to not have it tattooed on you. But,
exactly.
So akrasia is the state of doing something, when you're doing something wrong and that it's wrong, that you have the sort of classic example, or I don't know, maybe not classic example, but a example that springs to mind for me is Colin McGinn, who used to be a professor at our philosophy department, and I remember him seeing an interview with him where he described himself as a meat-eating vegetarian, meaning that he held the moral position that it was wrong to eat meat, but he did it anyway. So that would be an example taken seriously, of akrasia. And so this paper referred to Huck Finn as a inverse Socratic, right? Because he's somebody who is having his conception of himself is like somebody who's suffering from akrasia, knows what the right thing to do is, but they're just not strong enough to do it. Even though, we would think, or at least if we disagree with Aristotle about the knowledge condition, you'd think, no, he's definitely acting virtuously because he's doing this incredibly good and honorable thing for good and honorable reasons.
I would say the more classic example is helping your friend hide a body. Or helping your friend bury a body.
Yeah, although that's interesting because it's I don't Yeah.
Like, how good of a friend are you? Would you help me bury a body? I'd help you bury a body.
Yeah. That's so sweet.
Yeah.
So
Ben.
Yeah.
Would you help me bury a body?
I would absolutely help you bury a body. There's a
I would probably need more help than you would actually.
I'd end up doing most of the digging and
yeah.
Although that one's interesting, right? Because I guess that one's more closely analogous to what Huck thinks he's doing, right? Like usually I think of Acrasia, I think of somebody who's just sort of like, they can't quite bring themselves to do the right thing, whereas in cases like what Huck thinks he's doing, or what maybe the person who helps bury a body, at least assuming that, your friend didn't have a good reason to kill the person.
If you killed someone, you would definitely have a good reason.
That's so sweet.
And I would help you bury the body.
Yeah. So yeah, you have, and which by the way, the Huck Finn example, I think part of the reason that came to mind is I've heard her mention this before, but I don't know, remember it came up somehow last time I was in East Lansing. My mom was telling me the story about my great, not quite sure how many greats, grandfather, and
a very great grandfather,
and the one with one great more than that, both of whom died in the Civil War. Obviously, the one with one fewer great already had kids, since he died, but they both lived in Tennessee, and they were both about to be drafted into the Confederate Army, but they didn't, since they didn't want to do that, so they word kind of came around that people were coming, and they both got on horses and fled over the border to Kentucky, which was still held by the Union, where they volunteered for the Union Army. And since I guess if they had to fight in an awful war, at least didn't want to do it on behalf of slavery, and which something I think about a lot. When I see like the sort of defenses of when people are like, "Oh, you can't judge people by the standards of our time," blah blah blah. It's like,
why not?
It's like, well, neither of them.
That would be better.
Both of these people. Oh,
that would be better.
Both of these people were completely illiterate. They couldn't sign their names on the forms, but so they hadn't read any abolitionist pamphlets or anything clearly, but they could piece together that holding other human beings as slaves was wrong. They made that leap of insight.
Like if some people at that time could recognize that slavery was wrong just with the old thinker up here, why can't we think that everybody should have done that?
Exactly. So yeah, I guess one other place to bring it is one way of objecting to virtue ethics is by questioning whether.
Bring it, Ben. Bring it.
Is questioning whether the sort of picture of human psychology that tends to be attached to it is realistic given everything that we now know. So is it actually the case that we even have these super broad character traits, like honesty, for example?
Well, I mean, maybe we do. I'm not a psychologist. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But if we don't, like I was saying earlier, if you're honest in some situations and not in others, you're not an honest person, because in order to be an honest person, you have to be consistently honest. And maybe that's just a lot harder. Maybe it's a lot harder to be a good person than we think it is.
Yeah, so that's one response to this, because you could question.
It's not supposed to be easy. Being a good person has never been thought to be easy.
So yeah, you could question, like, because people, Yeah, because people will say, look, maybe there isn't like some general characteristic of honesty. Maybe people are predisposed to be honest or dishonest in different contexts or
with different people.
Yeah, about different parts of their lives, whatever. But yeah, then like one way that you could, if you're a virtue ethicist, you could respond to that is you could just say, okay, so truly virtuous people are much more rare.
So it's hard to be honest is what you're saying. It's hard to be an honest person. Well, okay.
Right.
I'm fine with that.
A different reason, I don't know if it exactly counts as an objection, but like I think a point of frustration with virtue theory is you might say, look, I know what the utilitarian thinks that the right thing to do is, right? Like I know what the utilitarian thinks I should do in any given situation. I should do the thing that's going to bring about the most happiness and the least suffering. And if we're not sure, that's just because we're not sure about the factual premises, what the outcome's going to be. Mm-hmm. But like at least assuming that we've got all that sorted out, the utilitarian is giving me very clear advice. And the Kantian is, again, you can find some ambiguity around the edges, but the Kantian seems to be giving me pretty clear advice too, right? Like follow the categorical imperative.
The reason to be good is because that's what helps you live. You can't live a good life, a good life from your point of view. You're not going to be living a good life if you aren't being a good person.
Yeah. Which that would be the Aristotelian, argument. Yeah. You do also, you do have other forms of virtue theory that arrive at these conclusions, about virtue in slightly different routes, but that would be the Aristotelian route to that. So I think, that's definitely like I think you could definitely make an argument there that there is an appropriate
level of honesty. Just because something is true does not mean you have to say it.
That's very wise.
Ben always says, "Is anything come into your head that doesn't come out of your mouth?" Not really.
So maybe there's being dishonest is bad, but
one should be good.
Oversharing is also bad.
Do you want to live a good life?
Oh, this is what you're responding to.
Well, there was another one up above that, and now, like why be good was up above that, and because I'm assuming you want to live a good life, and Aristotle doesn't think you can live a good life without being a good person.
Yeah,
be quiet, Ryan.
This is a place that, and this is a place you could push back too, because you could say, like, is it like, okay, so if Aristotle's just talking about happiness, okay, is it really true that acting virtuously is going to be what's going to most reliably, lead to that? But then if what he's baking into what counts as a good life is basically a life that fulfills all of these virtues, then it starts to feel a little circular. Another way I think you could, so what I was going to say is like, so another way that you could be dissatisfied with this picture is you could say, the utilitarian is giving me very clear advice. They're saying, here's what you should do. You should do the things that can lead the most happiness. The Kantian is giving me very clear advice. They're saying, does your proposed course of action, violate the categorical imperative? Could you will it to be a universal law without contradicting your motives?
Are you using someone solely as a means?
Yeah. And so those seem pretty straightforward. Whereas with virtue ethics, to the extent that the virtue ethicist is even interested in the sort of direct what should you do question, it seems like they start giving you answers like, well, you should act like a virtuous person would act.
So what you're getting at is there are no rules.
Yeah.
That's there are no rules, but there are rules. So if a virtue is courage, then there's a rule associated with every virtue. So if a virtue is courage, be courageous. No. I've got one of his hands, down here.
Probably not is the answer, Andy.
So every virtue has an associated rule, do this, do this, do this. Every vice has an associated rule. Don't do this, don't do this. So it seems like those rules are pretty straightforward. I mean, they don't all distill down into one rule like in the other two cases, but you do have rules.
Yeah, although I guess if you want to keep pushing this, you could say, like, okay, especially for a lot of these things, if you're supposed to show the right amount of, whatever it is, right? Whatever sort of mode of behavior we're talking about. Well, how do you know what the right amount is? And often
you practice.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good. So that's one
you practice. Virtue is something that you get through habituation. You have to practice it. It's like being a good dancer. It's something that you have to practice, and it becomes a habit eventually.
Unless you're just naturally amazing at dancing, like I am.
So last time we went dancing, I had to dance with Ryan because
you couldn't handle how awesome my dancer was, is what I'm hearing. So
what was I gonna say?
So habituation.
Habituation.
Yeah, it's like being a good person on this view is like
it becomes a habit. So that, let's say, if you're an honest person and you see that your classmate has left behind his wallet, it's not even going to occur to you, oh, I could keep this wallet, or oh, I could take the money out of this wallet. Just automatically you're going to go chase your classmate down and give him his wallet back, because that's the only thing that even comes into your mind, because you are a truly honest person at that point, and dishonest actions don't even present themselves to you as possibilities
on that day.
So, I'm all for that.
Yeah. So on this view, being a good person is less like the sort of deontological view, oh, you're a good person if you're doing all the good things, that it is like being a good person is like being a good dancer or being a good violinist, that you have to practice it a whole lot. So the habituation is part of the answer, and another part of the answer that virtue theorists will often give is that you should find virtuous people and try to emulate them.
And not just do the things that they do. Let's say you think your grandfather is a very virtuous person. That doesn't mean just, oh, well, when my grandfather was
That's a deep cut. That's something Zizek brought up when he was on the show. Not me doing it, but
I still like the idea of you spinning open-armed in the snow.
Yeah. On the day that the Soviet Union lasted longer than the Paris Commune, Lenin danced in the snow. That's something that Zizek brought up. But in any case, so you don't just think like, okay, you've got your model.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So if you think your grandfather is a virtuous person, you don't even think, okay, well, what did grandpa do when this situation happened to him? Or what would grandpa do if he was in this situation? It's not just a mimicking. You should ask yourself, why would grandpa make this choice, and then start reasoning like grandpa reasoned, not just do what grandpa did, but do it for why grandpa did it. And it depends on why the other option doesn't occur. If you just don't think about it, then no, that doesn't make you virtuous. But if it doesn't occur to you because you're so habituated, because you've always chosen to do the honest thing, then yeah.
Yeah. So the point about emulating virtuous people ties into the point about habituation, because maybe you're starting out by just mimicking what they would do, but then that sort of builds up the virtue muscles,
or that, and going through their reasoning process. What would grandpa's reasoning be here? Okay, I'm gonna follow that. But eventually you don't have to do all that. You don't have to think about grandpa or grandpa's reasoning. You just do it automatically.
Yeah. So And actually, this question, Darius's question about could be virtuous if the other option does occur to you, I think is really interesting because.
Well, that's what I was just addressing.
Yes, but I think that sentence.
Because I thought it was interesting.
Yes, that sentence didn't end at the word interesting. For the further reason, which is that, this is fake news. A further reason that it's interesting is that I think it's a really telling difference between this kind of Aristotelian virtue approach and Kant's view about morality and what kinds of actions have moral worth, because Kant places all this emphasis on acting out of duty as opposed to acting out of inclination. Michael Sandel, I'm not crazy about everything that he's written, but he has some really good lectures that you can find on YouTube. And I think the best one is the one about Kant. And he has this good example, although again, it's also a very dated example at this point, about there's an old Sprite commercial that said "Obey your thirst," and that there's a Kantian insight there, right? So Kant thinks, that acting morally is all about freeing yourself from the sort of the sort of control of these outside forces pulling you around, these inclinations, hunger, thirst, greed, whatever. So instead you act on duty, which Kant has this whole complicated story according to which acting on moral duty, even though it's the same for everybody, is still a law that you're giving yourself with your reason. And so Kant thinks that actions have moral worth precisely to the extent that you're resisting the pull of inclination in order to act on duty. So he even says, in the groundwork of the metaphysics of morals, that the person who is preserving their life just because they enjoy being alive doesn't get any particular moral credit for that. That is an unkind way to put it, but I think not necessarily an inaccurate way to put it. Read The Call to Smart by Freddie DeBoer. That's a very good book. So whereas the person whose life is just totally miserable and they're tempted because their misery is to commit suicide, Kant thinks actually gets moral credit for that because they're resisting the tug of inclination in order to do their duty. Say
that again.
In order to do their duty. But in a way, I think Aristotle, it's a very different picture, because I think Aristotle would say, that it's actually a sign of having really developed these virtues, that the alternative course of action doesn't even occur to you. There's nothing to resist, that you could just act on moral autopilot, because you wouldn't think, oh, I should just keep the wallet for myself. You just think, oh yeah, it's a wallet. Of course, got to go return that. And that shows that you've really developed the virtue.
Mm-hmm. So it's much more intuitive, I think. We want people's motives to matter. And with utilitarianism, one of the objections that Mill addressed was that it was unrealistic to expect that people were always going to act out of the motivation to preserve the greater good or to think about the greater good, that you couldn't get somebody to act out of that motivation all the time. And Mill's like, well, who said I care about motivation? It doesn't matter why you do it, just do it. And with Aristotle, it's totally different. It's not enough to just do the action. And I think that's more what we want out of people, is to know that even when they do the right thing, that they're doing it for the right reasons. I think that makes it, if you're following virtue ethics, it's a lot more likely that you're going to continue to do the right thing than these other two theories, I think.
Yeah, and just to answer the question about Kant, Kant would say that. So Kant would make a distinction between the action being morally right and your performance of the action having moral worth. So he would say, look, if you're following the categorical imperative, but the reason you're following it is a reason of inclination, then you're doing the right thing. It's just you don't get any
credit.
Yeah,
moral credit for it.
Yeah, I always think of, if you've watched The Good Place, the first episode where they show you the point system, that's like if you cut somebody off in traffic, it's like minus 5 points. If you I don't remember all of them,
but if you save the drowning kid, but you do it because you want to be famous, you don't get points for that.
And related, by the way, there's a good line in there related to the earlier discussion where abolishing slavery is like plus 2 million points or something. And so then later in the episode, there's a conversation about which of the former presidents are in the bad place, and the Michael says all of them except Lincoln, right? So that's because again he got that 2 million point bonus. But yeah, so Kant would say, you're doing the right thing. You just don't get the moral points for it, right? It doesn't have that kind of moral worth if your motive is inclination. So like one of his examples is the shopkeeper who considers shortchanging the customer and doesn't do it, but the reason he doesn't do it is because he's worried that word will get around and it'll be bad for business, rather than
he's done the right thing by not shortchanging the customer, but he hasn't done it for the right reason, so he doesn't get moral points.
Yeah.
And Mill doesn't care.
Yeah.
Mill's just like, as long as you do the right thing, I don't care why you did it. And this seems to be a lot more likable.
Yeah.
That part of the theory.
And I really like that comment that, it's like the Aristotle, it's not so much, that like, if you're obeying your thirst, that's bad. In the Sprite analogy, it's that you just need to make sure that you're you're cultivating the morally appropriate thirsts, and then you're acting on those.
That's right.
So that seems right for Aristotle. Yeah. So let's see. All right. If I'm feeling a little like this has been a pretty good intro to virtue ethics. If anybody has any questions they want to throw in at the end.
Dr. Pepper is the moral soda. I'm from Texas. I can't possibly give any other answer.
I don't drink pop if it doesn't have rum in it. So that's I don't have anything to add to this.
Pop.
Yeah, soda is like it's like soda water or like you get like that something you might get at a coffee shop or something. That's what you're talking about is pop.
No, I'm talking about Dr. Pepper.
Fair enough.
It's its own thing.
Yeah.
I've never tried that.
Yes, that is most certainly true, Oliver. Top quality chat comments tonight. So yeah, originally I was thinking for the next one of these, we might do that philosophy of language thing I'd suggested, although now that
I don't even know what you just said. Do you want to do a philosophy of language thing? And I was like, yeah, we can talk about it, but I don't even know what that is.
Like you do, but okay.
I don't. You didn't tell me.
Oh, like what specifically I have in mind? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'd have to have a longer conversation about that. But,
I would hope so.
But with this talk of bringing in Ryan as a guest, maybe if
he has to be here on time.
Yes,
if we're gonna do this.
Yes, and
stay the whole time. I'm not sure if he's even still here.
Yeah, sad. Nope, there he is. So
who knows? I might be a Tennessean before too long.
Yeah, well, in any case, you're a Michigander at the moment, so it's pop.
I will never be anything but a Texan.
Yeah, so yeah. But in any case, so if we have Ryan on as a guest, maybe we should do free will and determinism.
Yeah, I think that would be y'all are basically on the same page, yeah.
Yeah, but you would vigorously disagree, so
yeah, we might need a fourth. we might need a fourth person. So I'm not. No, you cannot convert a Texan. So I'm not completely.
Yeah.
Y'all will just talk over me.
I don't think so. I think it would be 2-1, but I think you're also much more strident about it. So
wow.
I think it'd be all right.
Who was that? What were we talking about that day? And was it you, me, and Ryan, or you, me, and David that we were having that yell fest in the car?
About what?
I don't remember.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, it was a one boxer too.
Oh, yeah. Newcomb's.
Was that Ryan or David?
Oh, that was definitely Ryan.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah, and you were wrong, and Ryan and I were right. Okay, I remember now.
Yeah, because you two were both adamant one boxers, and I'm an ambivalent two boxer.
You're not supposed to be ambivalent.
Well, I am. I mean, maybe I'm not supposed to be.
You're just doing it wrong. If you're ambivalent, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I've spent so much time trying to get students to feel the intuitive force of whichever one they don't start out believing that at this point I'm a little ambivalent. But I do think there's a much better case for the $2 solution to Newcomb than you guys think there is.
And being born a Texan, I had no free will about soda. You have to be a Dr. Pepper lover to be a Texan. It's determined.
Well, it might be determined, but doesn't mean there's no free will.
Now that's crazy. That's just crazy talk. Yeah, click on that one. Yeah.
Actually, that would be fun. I'd actually like to do that. That would be a different kind of thing. You know, we do the. I don't think we could require that everybody watching it had actually read all of Infinite Jest, but I'd actually be up for doing a stream where we talked about Infinite Jest sometime. I think that might be fun.
That's another thing. In Texas, everything is, or in the South, everything is Coke, and then it's what kind of Coke, and then it's you tell your kind of Coke.
So like you go and order a Coke, and they bring you a Coke, and you're like, no, I wanted a Pepsi.
No, they wouldn't do that because you would ask first. So or they would ask first what kind of Coke you wanted.
So what kind of Coke y'all want? You know, Pepsi.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Oliver.
Well,
but yeah, this would be a fun topic, so we shouldn't. If you on any, there are only a couple of possible scenarios, and on all of them, you're getting more money. No, we're not doing this now. We're gonna do this. We will do this.
All right.
I don't know if we'll do it next week because you have your philosophy of language thing that you want to do.
Well, I was actually thinking maybe we'd do free will determinism if Ryan wants to come on next week, but
we don't know if Ryan is available to come on next week.
Yeah, well, if only there was some way of finding out.
I know. I'll send a pigeon after we get done.
Yeah. I would say actually that quantum physics isn't going to help as much as you think it is.
It's not. It's still not going to get us free will.
Or I'll say if you don't think that you get free will
new Coke
with determinism, then it's unlikely that you'll get it from there. There are, like, Robert Kane disagrees. He thinks it does get it for you. I'm paranoid about copyright now, so I'm not gonna play it. But there's a nice scene in the Richard Linklater film Waking Life where they give the sort of case for thinking that quantum physics isn't really going to help her free will. So if you just look up on YouTube Waking Life free will scene, you'll see it there.
Charles, if Ryan is available and we do have Ryan, I can give you homework in 3 words, which is read Ryan's dissertation.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. It is called No Fate But What We Make, the Compatibility of Free Will and Determinism. And you can find that is available online.
Ryan's is the only dissertation I have ever read other than my own.
God, that hurts.
Why? No one wants to read your A and not A dissertation.
Wow. This just gets worse and worse. Yes, I wrote my dissertation about logical paradoxes, and Jen has no interest.
At the Denny's on Thanksgiving in one evening. We know we've been over this.
That's not at all true. It's not even remotely true.
But you know what?
I wrote the paper that was later expanded.
Oh, yes, in whatever. One thing I would say, and my students.
Okay.
Oh, there we are.
There we go.
Okay. My students, when I tell them this, they're always like, "Are you sure?" Or they kind of look at me like I'm trying to trap them. But Wikipedia is the perfect reference for all things philosophical. I'm not joking.
Yeah,
it really is. I've gotten so much from Wikipedia in my philosophical life.
No, that's true. I think Wikipedia is a good way to find things out. It's not a good way to do like research for a paper, but it's a good way to find things out.
Yeah, like if you're like, well, there's this debate between compatibilism and incompatibilism. What does this really mean? Then definitely I would go to Wikipedia or Ryan's dissertation.
Yeah, so
we might have Ryan next week and we might not.
Yay. If not, we'll do the philosophy of language thing, and at some point we'll do Newcomb's puzzle,
and we'll also have to have Ryan for that, because then it can be 2-1 against you.
And yes,
it's only fair.
Oh, and I have I lost the so yeah, he means, but Sam Harris told me compatibilism is wrong or incompatibilism is right. So see the upcoming GTA episode a week. So
told you he was going to play.
It's not Monday, but it's a week from Monday. The title of the episode is Sam Harris is wrong about everything. So which we thought pretty much covered it. So we're going to have Gene Bajalan on to talk about the Middle East stuff that Sam Harris is wrong about. Ryan to talk about the free will stuff that Sam Harris is wrong about. And our friend Mark Warren to talk about the ethics stuff that Sam Harris is wrong about. But yes, you should go read Ryan's dissertation, No Fate But What We Make. There's
and we might, speaking of plugging stuff on one of your movie things, how about A Bug's Life? And I'll be around for that for sure.
Yeah. So this for the next.
Well, look, truth detector. I'm not gonna juice carrots. I mean, for real. Come on now. I'm just saying.
So yeah, the
leafy green.
The stuff that's on the schedule for sure is next on 2 days from now on Sunday for the next Sunday night debate breakdown live stream. JG Michael, the host of Parallax Views, is going to be the guest, and we are going to be reviewing it's Timothy Leary's 1990 debate with G. Gordon Liddy. Very, very strange thing that actually happened. And then on Monday, RJ Esco, who people might remember from previous. Oh my God, that's so bad. Yeah, Harris has a line about how he doesn't reference any of the academic stuff about metaethics because it's too boring, which is like, okay, but like, he could have stood with.
I don't want to reference boring stuff.
He could have.
I want to reference A Bug's Life.
He could jazz it up when he presents it. He should have read it. He would have learned something.
Exactly. With the Dr. Pepper, we got to juice prunes. Take that, whoever you were that told me to juice carrots.
Yeah. So yeah, on Monday, RJ Esco of the 0 Hour with RJ Esco, who people might remember from previous installment of the Sunday night debate live stream, because we watched me and Doug Lane and Pascal Robert watched his and another guest I'm blanking on right now, I think, watched Esco's debate with Matt Taibbi about Herbert Marcuse. So Esco likes the philosophy stuff. So we're going to be talking on Monday about this book, Why Not Socialism by G.A. Cohen.
Covering up the title.
by G.A. Cohen. Who is...
How do you even juice a carrot?
I don't know. You have a juicer and you feed it into it?
No, you put it on top, and like with an orange, and you put it on top, and like you can't do that.
Maybe it's a different kind of juicer. Maybe you need to buy a special carrot juicer.
I'm not buying a carrot juicer.
So RJ Esco is going to be on talking about this book in the first half. And Nando Vila is going to be on.
Nando!
And you're going to start singing?
No, I only do that when it's the two of us.
Yeah. I've mentioned this to Jen before, but the first time Nando was on Dead Pundit Society, Adam played him Fernando at the.
And he mentioned that to me because that's what I was singing
at the beginning of the episode. So RJ Esco and Nando Vila on Monday. On Wednesday, we're watching Starship Troopers, or we're talking about Starship Troopers. So if you want homework, watch Starship Troopers, before Wednesday, so you can watch me talk about that with Jacobin deputy editor Micah Utrecht, lefty historian and foreign policy guru Daniel Bessner.
Ryan, you've never had a juiced carrot in your life.
I
will lay money on that.
I would be very surprised, I have to say. And also our very talented graphic designer, J. Andrew World.
Woo, Andrew!
Producer Forrest, of course, and also philosophy professor, cartoonist, and juiced carrots aficionado Ryan Lake are the people who are going to be there to talk about Starship Troopers. The Wednesday after, so the Wednesday after next, we are going to be talking about The Shining. So
what are we doing in Bug's Life the next week?
If you want. So it's so since Cale Brooks, the producer from the Jacobin YouTube channel, wanted to come on, we talked about that. And Wednesday, April 7th, was the Wednesday he was going to be off from the normal stuff that he does there. And so that is my birthday. I'm going to be even older. So
can't even imagine that.
But so I thought about not doing it. I was I'd hang out with some friends and talk about one of my favorite movies. That actually sounds like a decent thing to do on my birthday. I reserve the right to be genially drunk. But in any case, that's coming up on April 7th. And 2 days before that, on April 5th, there's going to be that Sam Harris is wrong about everything episode. So lots of good stuff coming up. Let me actually just check something real quick before I sign off. So
at some point I'll be around doing something.
Yeah. Next Friday, you'll be around for the next
whatever it is we're doing.
The next Philosophy Friday, and either philosophy of language or free will and determinism on one of those two subjects.
Newcomb's Paradox.
Or possibly Newcomb's Paradox, one of those three for sure. I'm actually a big fan of Beyond Sausages. Jen doesn't like them. But
I like the Beyond. When I ate meat, I didn't really like sausage, so I don't really like any of the fake sausages. I like Beyond Burger. It's just a sausage thing. It's not a brand thing. It's a sausage thing.
Fair enough. And I guess the final plugs would be that since we are getting close enough, I should make myself remember to plug this every time we do something. So my book comes out on May 1st. You can pre-order it from all the usual places, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everything. But what you see here is the pre-order page for Red Emma's, worker-owned bookstore in Baltimore. You can order books from online. So that's redemmas.org. The book, Canceling Comedians While the World Burns, Critique of the Contemporary Left, comes out on May 1st. We'll start talking about that on the show a lot, very shortly, because we're coming right up to that May 1st date. And on April 1st, the class that I'm teaching for Michael Albert's online school, Social and Cultural Change.
So much going on here.
Starts, so should be good. Apparently about 42 people enrolled in that right now, but there is still room if you want to do that. So
how many people can you have?
I'm not sure, but
more than 42.
Clearly more than 42. Enrollment is still open. So that's just Google School Social and Cultural Change. It's either sscc.teachable.com or teachable.sscc.com. I can never remember. But in any case, that really looking forward to that. Basically, it's basically the course version of my first book. So that's all right. Hats off to Andy for the Douglas Adams reference. So in any case, so if you want to sign up for that, should be a lot of fun. I am, kind of scrambling to put it all together, but the main non-YouTube, non-family, non-day job thing I'm going to be doing over the course of the next several days leading up to April 1st is getting that class ready to start on the 1st. Going to be video lectures and written stuff and weekly Zoom sessions while that class is going on in April and May. So lots of good stuff there. Yeah, the Sopranos episodes are monthly. So we did the one for March, but April's coming right up.
Andrew is wonderful, but he did not do the cover art for Give Them an Argument.
He did not. Ryan Lake did the cover art for Give Them an Argument. Ryan, if people don't know this about him, has a philosophy-themed webcomic. Chaos Pet is what it's called, although he also, I think these days, most of his philosophy cartooning is on a website called The Daily Noose, N-O-U-S. So that is good stuff. It's funny. There's a funny one about philosophical zombies, actually. So a couple about philosophical zombies. If you sign up for the class, I mean, I don't control this. I'm just a lowly employee. For this particular thing, it's Albert, and I don't know whose partners are, but they have, but that's like an institution, the School of Social and Cultural Change. But my understanding is if you sign up for the class, you have permanent access to the website, so the videos and all that stuff forever. So in any case, yes, that was an inspired cover choice. And I'll also give Dave Smith, so he's a libertarian who I've argued with a couple times on his show and on mine, credit for having a good line when I was on his show. He held up Give Them an Argument, and which is not behind me, and he pointed at the picture of Ben Shapiro on the cover, and he said that was drawn to actual size. So that's credit where credit's due. But I think we are going to cut that for today. So I will see those of you who in the chat, who show up to Sunday night debate breakdown live streams on Sunday at 7:00 Eastern. And really appreciate everybody who comes and livens it up with these very high quality chat questions. Especially those of you who are patrons. Earlier today, did a Discord office hours group voice chat with patrons, which is a lot of fun, like those always are. If you can, you like what we do here, you want to support it, keep us in whiskey and all that. Please do consider becoming a patron, and we are going to cut it there for today. So
Team Snoopy forever.
Left is best.